All right, welcome to Focus Today, and it's always a delight to have back on the program our wandering, let's see what he just wanders a lot. He just, you know, he's here, he's there, he's in New York, he's in Grants Pass, he's serving Grants Pass.
That's right, serve Grants Pass.
He's lost in Times Square. Bob Just is with us this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hey,
Good
buddy,
morning,
how
Perry.
are you?
Good morning. It's so good to see you and be back at the Dove.
You've been traveling, you've been all over the place?
Yeah, 3 months in New York looking after my mother, and was really a wonderful experience. Difficult, but she's making a transition, and she was in the hospital in April, and I went there for that. And but it was really great to be.
Did you get on the Hannity show again?
No, I didn't. Well, I did. I visited the Hannity show and took some friends, and but I didn't do the show. I would let you know if I was going to do the show.
I was going to say we would have gotten the press release.
You will be
like
the first
that,
to hear.
Like
That's right.
Well, thanks for coming in. It's been a long time. A lot to cover for the segments we have together this morning. Let's jump right into it. I think that one of the big things is going to be whether or not the Republicans are going to show any kind of fortitude and contrast to the nonsense that's going on with this current administration. Has to be whether or not they're going to rise to the challenge to defund Obamacare. And you know that debate's going on in the Senate. It's certainly going on in the House. We think that it could get through the House. It gets over to the Senate, whether or not the Senate can drum up enough support to get it done. The president could literally shut the government down if Obamacare is left out of the budget. But to me, aside from all the issues about Obamacare, and they're obvious because majority of Americans clearly don't want it and don't like it, is whether or not the Republicans have the fortitude to do this. And at the moment, it appears to be shaky. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I agree that it is. I mean, you know, I guess part of that question is what is the Republican Party up against? And they are, let's face it, Washington, D.C. is enemy territory, if I can put it that way. Washington, D.C. is a thriving city when the rest of the country is struggling, seriously struggling. Washington, D.C. is across-the-board secular liberal. Dominated by the culture, which the rest of the country is. The media does outrageous things, as you know, misreporting on the Zimmerman issue, for one thing. And so I think part of the reason conservatives in Washington and in the Congress can't summon up the fortitude to stand is that they know they're going to be attacked full bore in everything they do, not just by the Washington D.C. media, but by the entire culture, and so it's intimidating. I think that's part of it. They still have to stand, but
it's more than that, Bob. You have a country that does not want Obamacare. You have a country that you got the unions now against Obamacare.
Isn't that amazing?
You've got, I don't know of anybody that says thumbs up on Obamacare other than Obama. And you know what's interesting about this issue? And I don't say this to be disrespectful. It's just looking at the big picture. But everything that the president said about Obamacare has turned out to be a lie. There isn't one bit of truth of anything that he did in selling Obamacare that is true.
You mean you can't keep your own insurance?
You can't. That's just the beginning of the list. So the Republicans, who are now appearing to have no fortitude, lost their way, they can't seem to get anything done, they're not opposing the president on anything. The one issue that they got the general consensus of the United States behind them, of the citizens in the United States behind them, is Obamacare. Do you think they have the guts to defund it?
Well, I think some of them do. I know you're asking the big question, and that is, does the party as a party have the guts to do it? And I'm afraid that I don't think they do. I think that you go to talk, when you talk about messaging, you hit a really important point. I heard you doing it just recently. In messaging, you've got to go to the heart, to the heart, to the head, through the heart, is the way you put it. And so the question, one of the questions that we'd have to talk about in terms of the Republican Party being able to stand up, they have to have the courage, but they also have to have the ability to stand up, is do they have the ability to message what they're doing enough so that they can match the bully pulpit of the presidency? Because Obama will have that pulpit and the media will support him.
Well, I've seen some of the preliminary ads that are being developed. One is it shows a doctor saying how she's going to lose her patients because they can't afford her, or they're going to be transferred elsewhere. She may have to shut her practice down. You know, the basic argument of why Obamacare is going to hurt a physician. But it appears to me, if the Republicans cannot stand against, if the Republicans don't vote for defunding Obamacare, that they just forfeited 14 and they just forfeited 16.
We need to see the battle. We need to see, win or lose, we need to see them stand and fight. I mean, I know I do.
Yeah.
I need to see conservatives, I need to see Republicans stand up and fight.
They're saying that they don't, they're saying this, that if they take Obamacare funding out of the budget and send it on to the president then has two choices: sign that budget without Obamacare funding, or shut the government down. Which then they are afraid of the negative backlash on that by the government and all the services being shut down, because the president will use this as a political football. Do they have the guts to do that?
I mean, that's what it comes down to. I'd love to know your answer. I mean, I know you've been talking about it. But
I hope they do. It doesn't appear that they got, it just doesn't appear. They may get it through the House, but it's going to be tough in the Senate. Now, there's some young guys coming out, the Rubios, the Cruzes, the Rand Pauls and others that are starting to create a coalition. I think they got 13 now saying yes, they'll stand against the president, or they'll stand with the House in defunding Obamacare. I don't know. To me, I watched the Rush Limbaugh 1-hour interview with Greta, and got a lot of controversy over it. And I'm listening to this, and I thought, you know what, Rush. Some will say, well, he's broken the 11th commandment that Ronald Reagan said, you know, don't speak ill.
Attack fellow Republicans.
But, you know, actually, Reagan did that on several occasions himself. But here's the deal. He really blasted the Republicans for not having the guts, the fortitude, to stand up and say, if you don't create a contrast between what's being shoved down our throat, no matter what the consequences are politically, if you don't show a contrast, what good are you?
Well, you know, to that point, Hannity played Ronald Reagan's famous 1975 speech about no pastel colors. You know, that he was calling the Republican Party to be bold in vivid colors and not, you know, dishwater weak. And Hannity, of course, repeats that quote often. He played the full quote on last night. I think it was last night. I believe that passionately. I think the average American is not paying close enough attention to be persuaded by minutia arguments. You know, they need to see something bold and big. They need to have the issue clearly defined. It drives me crazy, for example, every time the issue of immigration is brought up and the word illegal is dropped, or they're called undocumented workers, because the issue is the illegality. The issue, what will attract people to the debate is having the lines clearly drawn. You can then get into how you do it, but don't slide on the issue. The issue with Obamacare, it seems to me, is the loss of our freedom. We're talking about 1/6 of the American economy being controlled by the government, which addresses the larger issue, and that is, we've allowed the federal government now to be so powerful and so invasive in our lives, and I'm not just talking about, you know, our telephone calls, but I mean invasive in everything we do. It's like when you live your life these days, increasingly you have to say, oh, but what will the federal government think about this? And that's what has to be defined, because ultimately that's what Reagan stood against. Let me, you know, I
think the Republicans are suffering, excuse me, the same thing that a lot of Christians are suffering from. We don't know how to stand in love at the same time. We don't know how to stand and oppose something while still loving those we oppose. We haven't figured out how to do that in such a way. The media still says, well, you know, if you're going to stand against me, then you hate me. I mean, we know that they're going to tag you with that. But in our hearts, We don't know how to stand against something and still love. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do that with the gay community. We don't know how to oppose homosexuality and gay marriages and still love those people because they're broken children that need the love of God. We don't know how to do that. And so now it's showing up across the board. How do we stand against this administration, their policies and their ideology, because we're afraid of, I think they're being afraid of being tagged as hate people or bigoted or something like that. There's another issue here on the table. I'm not sure what it is. I'm shaking my head. I'm going, John Boehner, Speaker Boehner, why aren't you tying these policies in knots by throwing every bill you can at this administration and forcing them to say no on some of these things instead of just rolling with it?
Yeah,
I don't get this.
Well, I think, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think they care too much what they're going to look like in the Washington Post the next morning or in the New York Times. I mean, I think, you know, it's hard for us, you'd have a better sense of this than I would, but I think it's hard for the average American to understand how embattled conservatives are in Washington, D.C. I just came back from 3 months from New York City, surrounded by socialist liberals for 3 months, including my mother.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
There's a little radiation around you, Bob, right now. We'll take a quick break. If you want to join us, you're welcome to. But Bob, just in the house. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, Bob Just is with us, and we just kind of jawing this morning on some of the things that are concerning us. And by the way, if you want to join the conversation, you can give us a call. We can put you in the conversation. And Bob, let me ask you this: a couple questions come up because we can probably spend too much time on one thing. The president has recently said that these scandals in Washington are phony scandals. Now, you're talking about Benghazi, IRS, Fast and Furious, the NSA, and the list goes on and on. Phony scandals.
They even had the nerve, yesterday I think it was, they had the nerve to actually name the IRS scandal. And we're talking specifically about investigating conservative groups, Tea Party groups, etc., and the Benghazi scandal. They actually named the Benghazi scandal
as phony.
As phony. That is brazen. The word brazen is the word to apply. That is in your face, stone cold lying. Because there's no way you can call the Benghazi scandal phony. You can call it you know, not the scandal that conservatives say it is. It is horrendous. We lost 4 people. We don't really know what happened. We still don't know what happened. There are people being told not to step forward and tell the truth. To call it phony is let's go to the IRS scandal, which in terms of the information we know is even more egregious to call it a phony scandal. You have, you know, well over 100 groups that were investigated by the IRS. There's no question that this is a scandal.
Well, and now we're finding out that those meetings went all the way to the White House, all the way to the Oval Office. So that's yet to come out. You got Benghazi, you got the NSA thing, and then in the meantime, you've got NBC and CNN creating miniseries for Hillary Clinton.
You heard about that, huh? Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, they can do what they want to do. That's fine. But is this too soon? Are they trying to run these miniseries so that it preempts the scandals?
You know, that I'm glad you raised that issue. I'd forgotten that is, when you stop and think about it, it is stunning that NBC would do that, to ramp up for the 2016 election. And I'd love to get into that with you, whether you think that Hillary Clinton, because I hear more and more people saying no one can beat Hillary Clinton. And the fact that NBC would weigh in, and by the way, I don't know if you heard, but the story will not cover the 90s.
Yeah.
They're going to cover Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State and the Obama era and, you know, whatever else, you know, leading up to Obama, obviously. Post 9/11, I think, is probably what they're focused on. Because she took a fairly prominent role as a New York senator, and, you know, many people complimented her for standing her ground. Of course, she, I think, was preparing for the 2008 run. But when you think of the scandals of 2008 and now how the Weiner scandal in New York City is compromising the Clintons, because Weiner and his wife are comparing themselves to Bill and Hillary Clinton in terms of standing by your man and all of that. And that NBC would step forward and try to gloss this over, which is what they're going to do. They're going to glorify Hillary Clinton. It's hard to even put it to words. We have a media that has absolutely taken sides in the political arena. Absolutely, bold-faced taken sides. And we'll see what that NBC documentary is about. But they're weighing into the 2016 election.
Well,
and see, what is our response to that?
Well,
what do we have? We have the new media.
Yeah, and it is powerful. There are large audiences there. I mean, you take the internet and cable news, what it is, it's still a very powerful impact in the culture. But I can't see anybody else other than Hillary Clinton being the nominee. But I have no idea what's going to happen on the conservative side and who that could possibly be. I mean, the one person that everybody had their eye on, Marco Rubio, has he hurt himself with this immigration deal?
I think he has, yeah. I mean, granted, 2016 is a long way off, and he can do a lot of good and stand his ground in many issues, and maybe even rebuke the immigration bill that's coming forward, you know, when compromises are made, if that happens. I mean, I'm hoping the House will shut it down. But I think it goes back to your question, which I do think is the heart of the question. Courage is often called the essential virtue, because without courage, the other virtues don't, you can't implement the other virtues. Right. And the question does come down to courage. Are we willing to stand up and stand our ground, and knowing that we're going to be defamed? I mean, by the way, I saw your message on June 30th. I went on the website at First Naz. I have to tell people, I'm sorry, Barry, though, embarrass you, but people need to go June 30th, First Nazarene Church, Perry Atkinson, Google it. I'm sure you'll find it that way. Because you lay it down with those quotes of our founding fathers going through, you know, political and social dignitaries into the 20th century, where we stand and why we have to stand our ground and be bold. This is a time for boldness. So this goes back quickly to the candidate issue with Hillary Clinton. You know how I feel about Jezebel election. We have a contempt in this country for God's order of the family. A contempt for God's design of the family. That contempt translates to the political arena. Increasingly, you see the gender issue become a central part of the debate about whether a candidate can make it or not. Can they get the women's vote? Can they get the, you know, of course, the minorities too. We have to have a candidate that's going to be willing to stand up to Hillary Clinton, who's going to be a pure Jezebel candidate. It is going to be, this is our time. It's historic time for women to lead, and of course they mean leftist women. They don't mean, you know, they don't mean Sarah Palin. They mean leftist women. I wouldn't even be surprised if she chooses a woman vice president. In other words, it's going to be all bets off. This is a historic moment. Men have messed up this world. And by the way, that's not just me talking. That message is talked about often, especially in the context of war. My mother says that all the time, by the way. You know, men are the problem. So we're going to need a candidate, whether male or female, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about Sarah Palin coming back. We're going to need a candidate that can stand up to Hillary Clinton and call a spade, deal with her socialism, deal with her leftism, deal with the spirit of Hillary Clinton and what it represents, deal with the scandals, just really nail her. Yeah. Do we have a person who's going to be bold enough to do that? Because one final point, our four founding fathers, the famous line is lives, fortunes, and sacred honor when they signed the Declaration of Independence. Lives we get, that's easy. Fortunes, okay, yeah, a lot of them lost their fortunes. What do we mean by sacred honor? Those guys knew that the moment they signed that declaration, they would be defamed by the British Empire. They would be called scoundrels, they would be called rebels, they would be called whatever name possible. We have to have a candidate that's willing to be called those names.
The only way that can happen is, in my opinion, is the leadership of the Republican Party is going to have to sit down with the Tea Party movement and mend some fences.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because the battle in the Republican Party of the conservatives against the establishment is going to disable the Republican Party from winning anything. I don't care who the candidate is. And we saw that with Romney. And so somehow the leadership is going to have to sit down and say, all right, wait a minute, at the end of the day, and they're going to have to say, what is it that we believe in? What is our platform? And are we going to defend that platform, or are we going to make exceptions to every plank in that platform because we want that person in our party? And until that happens, I think you're in big trouble, because we're seeing it in the state, we're seeing it in the national level, and it's going to take really good leadership to sit down and say, all right, let's bring all this together. We have got to come back together. We have got to figure out a way to get along. And the old boys and the old gals are going to have to say it's time for the new ones and let them in and deal with it. Otherwise, kiss it off.
You know,
because a house divided against itself cannot stand. And right now, the Republican Party is divided.
And I'll take the connected to the Tea Party issue, and of course we were talking off the air about the Christie thing,
Yeah.
Rand Paul and Governor Christie. What is the primary message of the Tea Party? It drives me nuts that these people are positioned by the liberal media as fringe. The primary message of the Tea Party is we have a government that is out of control, a federal government that is out of control, both in its spending and its regulating. In other words, generally speaking, it's continually expanding its power, contrary to the Constitution. All right, that's the primary message. The other big issue in the 2016 election is going to be the social issues.
Yeah.
Do we have the courage to talk about gays in the military and try to push back on that? Do we have the courage to say, what are we doing putting our women in combat? How are we going to prevent our daughters from being drafted if we allow women in combat?
But you got the Tea Party and you got the establishment, and they're not together, and these are the issues that divide them. My message to the Tea Party is real simple. You have got to figure out how to put love in your message.
Yes.
You're coming off too hard, you're coming off too mean, you're coming off too angry. Okay? And my message to the establishment is get back to your roots, get back to what your platform says, which is a God-based platform. Get back there, and you can bring these two together. But outside of that, we got problems. So let me take a call here, and then we have to take a quick break. And Rich, thanks for waiting. What's up?
Oh, is that me on?
That's you on.
Okay, thank you. You know, in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, you know, the little scouts that printed out the little papers, I think a good way to counter the major media is to have the scouts or the churches or the bloggers to start printing up a one-page to a four-page letter stating exactly what you're talking about and handing them out to people, and hopefully they'll start waking up to the fact.
Well, I understand your concept, but let me catapult you into the digital age. Print just isn't going anywhere. You got to figure out how to do this through social media.
Well, okay, so it can be done through the computer, through the blogger.
Right.
But somehow that needs to get going.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
All right, let me take a quick break. Bob just with us, and we're just kind of pushing each other around a little bit this morning because I want to touch these high points with you, just to kind of get a feel for it, because we're, hey, here comes September, you know, and you're going to start hearing all these candidates begin to announce whether or not they're going to push Obamacare back. Who knows?
It's coming fast.
It's coming at us fast. All right.
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of Christians that just as soon not listen to this stuff at all. Yeah. And boy, I hear from them too. And I respect that. You know, so I don't. It seems like we're so divided we can't get together. So we got to figure out how to pull this thing back together. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and always fun to have Bob just back in the studio with us, and just kind of jawing on a bunch of things. Let me kind of turn this a little bit, Bob.
All right.
It appears to me that everything we're talking about has a very genuine, deep spiritual component to it. And what I sense happening is that if I was the enemy, I'd divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So you got the party divided. You got conservatives divided. Even in the Tea Party movement, there's a division, because there are those who are true constitutionalists or want to shrink government down, and then there are those who are just flat angry at everything, and they saw the Tea Party as a place to rally to. Mm-hmm. So it's divided. Now move it into the church. The church is divided over doctrinal issues, the interpretation of Christians being involved in the culture and trying to change it. Mm-hmm. You ought to read some of my emails. It's amazing. And the list goes on and on. I'm thinking, okay, we have a battle. Scripture says, "A wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities." Right. And so we know now that there's this spiritual war going on. Whose God is the one real God? Mm-hmm. Is it the God of Baal, which is government and bigger government and smart men and dumb men supposedly making all these decisions, and we're to bow to that? Or do we serve Christ and what he said in his word, and we go to the WWJD, what would Jesus do? Under every situation, do we run that through the JJ or the WWJD filter and everything we approach? I have changed my mind considerably on some issues, and I will say this, that I am looking for ways to reach the gay person. Mm-hmm, sure. I can't tell you that I found it, you know, and I'm not going to give into their agenda, and I'm not going to give into their desires to legalize what they want to do. Mm-hmm. I oppose that. But I see them as broken people. What's the difference of a person who's locked up in that kind of an addiction versus someone who's on drugs, alcohol, or has got other issues going on in their life? We've excused these other things in the church, and we've figured out a way to get along with it, but we haven't figured out how to administer that. And that's just one issue. Yeah. So it appears to me we are in a spiritual battle for the soul of America, unlike anything we've ever seen or witnessed. It's biblical, and yet we are not interpreting it as biblical. So there seems to be something else going on here than just President Obama getting away with everything.
Yeah, no, it really is biblical. And of course, you and I have been talking about that for years. And I've got a quote related to this, and ironically, it's a quote from one of our 20th century famous enemies, and that's Joseph Stalin, who was the famous tyrannous, murderous communist leader during actually about half of the 20th century. He led Russia. And he said about America, he said, "America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold." Its resistance, its ability to stay healthy, its immune system. Mm-hmm. He says it's patriotism, it's morality, and its spiritual life. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. Morality. That's our enemy talking.
Patriotism,
morality,
and spiritual
life. So now when we read that, do we think that's just a communist leader talking?
Well, we don't have Pledge of Allegiance in the school anymore. Okay.
Right. Increasingly.
You know, we have church has been demonized.
Yeah. But the point is that who is he speaking for? Is this just some dictator speaking? I mean, you think of what he wants to attack. Our patriotism under God America, our morality, understanding the family, understanding moral life, and our spiritual life, understanding that at the heart of everything is our relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's what they want to attack. Now, what is that?
Well, that's the anti-God spirit. That's the Antichrist.
And that's the spirit that is alive in this world and very aggressive.
And the one that I get a lot is, well, you know, we shouldn't be involved in this, and we shouldn't be part of this, that this is sin run amok and God's going to do his thing and all this and that. Well, all of those elements, there's pieces of all of that is true. But here's where I am now beginning to see a greater clarity as to the mess. And I say this because, not as a fear, not to be sensational, I say this as a deep thing in my heart, because I was on the phone with it yesterday for 45 minutes to Washington, D.C. But the next thing coming at us is this thing called hate crime.
Oh, yeah.
And the hate speech, and what's the other one? The fairness doctrine. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And the fairness doctrine. Can you imagine, folks, that every time I mention Jesus Christ on the air, that I got to go find an atheist and give them equal time?
Right.
Can you imagine that?
It's a nightmare. And there's nothing to do with fairness. And one of the best things Ronald Reagan did was get rid of that so-called fairness doctrine.
No question about it. And he got away, he threw out the window ascertainments and all the other things that we broadcasters have to go through. And so if they can't do it with a law, they'll do it with other policies. And I can't divulge some of the things that we're fighting right now, but I can tell you that it's serious. It's as serious as you can possibly get. And I'm looking at, well, wait a minute, could we lose one of these platforms because it's political correctness run amok? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And as long as, you know, well, I don't want to go down there. Let's go to Sandy. Right. I can get off on my Hi, Sandy, you're next. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
What I would like to see is Bob and Perry team up with Frank Peretti and write a book called Piercing the Political Darkness. It would sell 1 million copies overnight.
I'll never forget, Sandy, when I read that book.
Piercing the Political Darkness.
Piercing the Darkness is his book. That's profound. It is a spiritual fight. And Perry made that wonderful biblical reference that we wage not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. That's what we always have to remember, is that our opponents are not our enemy. Our enemy is the liar who lied to them lies they believed and are putting into action. And that's what's going on now. It is a spiritual fight. It is biblical, as Perry said, what's going on.
Thanks, Sandy.
Okay.
Thanks, Sandy.
We'll give it some thought.
Yeah.
I'm not doing anything between midnight and 4. What are you doing, Bob? We can get together and write a book.
Right. Or add that to our schedule.
Yeah. But, all right, it appears to me that it is spiritual. And the encroachments are coming at it. We saw a little bit of a trial balloon. It's still out there when the government went against the Catholic Church on the HHS.
Right.
That one's still kind of floating out there. But that was a trial balloon. Let's see if we can get into religion like that. And if the fairness doctrine comes out, it could go to every pulpit in America. Every pulpit in America.
Right.
We got Christian pastors in Canada, just north of us here.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Okay, going to jail for preaching what the Bible says about certain lifestyles and all of that stuff. Now, how do we preach the gospel and love at the same time when the gospel divides people?
And the irony is...
how do we do that?
That division is talked about. I mean, in other words, it's part of what the Bible does.
Yeah.
We're
rewriting the Bible and calling it cultural relevance. And I'm reading some articles now about the younger generation, better known as the millennials.
Yes.
They're gravitating to more of the ecumenical churches, primarily because A, their structure, and B, they get it straight. They're not interested in being handed a latte to come into a rock concert and to hear a preacher dressed in cool whatever and get up there and tell them that what they want to hear to feel good. They're actually interested in strong doctrine. They want it. They want the truth. Just tell me the truth.
Yeah, just tell me the truth.
Just tell me the truth, and I'll live it out from there.
And that's really the start and end point of what we've got to do.
Well, Bob, you're a cool dude.
It's good to be back, and I'm glad you were wearing blue this morning.
Yes, I know you got that on too. Well, let's stay in touch. There's a lot to cover as the days get closer.
Really, it's going to heat up quickly, as you said.
Yeah, welcome home.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. I am honored to have with us right now Greg DeRoche. He's the president of the Justice Fellowship. He's also the former Speaker of the House of Representatives for the state of Michigan, and he's working with the organization from the late Chuck Colson. And just recently, the House Appropriations Committee in Congress has honored the late Chuck Colson with a task force and federal corrections recognition. So, Greg, nice to have you with us. How are you, my friend?
It's great to be on the show, Perry. I really appreciate you having me out, in particular to talk about the proposed Charles Colson Commission.
Okay, so proposal. So what is this?
Well, what it is, if I could give a little bit of a background on it, I think a lot of your listeners, viewers, know about Chuck Colson and the impact he made in founding Prison Fellowship.
Right.
I'm the president of Justice Fellowship, what is an organization that Chuck Colson founded in 1983 after receiving a lot of requests from government leaders, recognizing that the criminal justice system that we have in America is a blessing from God, but it was also created by man, and it's riddled with flaws and errors and problems. And while Prison Fellowship does the work inside the walls, bringing the light there and the Word, Justice Fellowship could play a role in advancing Christian values in the political sphere, in the halls of the government, be it federal or at the state level. And this is really a culmination of our 30 years worth of work and the impact that we've had in those areas, but also very telling that this movement from the Christian community is absolutely gaining a foothold in the U.S. Congress, quite surprisingly to probably a lot of your viewers and listeners today.
Yeah, especially with the conversation we just had before I had you on.
I was listening to that.
This is very, very encouraging. So where is it in the process?
Well, where it is right now, it has an enormous amount of support. As people know, in this U.S. Congress is so divided, and I respect and personally these are my issues, but or professionally these are my issues. But there's a great many things that our courts and our leaders, our president, our governors are getting wrong. But in this area, they happen to be coming together, and that's the good news. And that's why I was so excited to be on your show, to let people know there is something to rally around. The light is getting through some of the darkness. And so I'm here bringing hope. And for those that say we're looking for something not created by man, but something only God could do, I give you the proposal for the Charles Colson Commission because it's received a lot of support on the left as well as on the right. It has passed through, and it is included in the subcommittee budget allocation of funds to actually review the criminal justice practices, specifically starting with the Bureau of Prisons and the practices, principles, behaviors there. I think in the secular world of the federal government, you'd find the words to say, are we getting the outcomes we would want? But really, in the section of the funding that this is placed, it's very open and inviting to faith-based initiatives. The label and the title that it holds, the Charles Colson Commission, obviously strong support for the advancement that faith-based organizations such as Prison Fellowship, Justice Fellowship, and so many of others have made in the prisons, at the Bureau of Prisons, but also in the states. And it's really part of a larger movement that is sweeping through the the states as we speak, where the governors and the state legislators are making very significant changes that are being endorsed by Christian organizations and faith-based groups, and what we're seeing is that movement in this funding and in this proposal for this commission really elevating itself to the national stage.
Wow, what an incredible thing. So it's attached to the bill. Is it coming through the House and then to the Senate? How do you feel as it goes?
I feel good, and the reason why I feel good, I have you introduced me. It was very kind of you. I was Speaker of the House some years ago in Michigan. I still have some hair left from it. I was elected about 9 years ago. So Chuck Colson he persuaded me to come to work here. He said he thought I had bigger plans for me, and I think that where I can serve God and where Justice Fellowship does is by helping legislators with their ideas, put them in a framework that could be successful. And I think that's what Congressman Wolf of Virginia has done here. He's the chairman of the Budget Subcommittee. He's a great Christian and a very talented leader, and he's put this in a position where I believe that it is very viable through the Senate and through the administration. And at this point, and we're going to be asking your viewers and your listeners and others to come to justicefellowship.org, sign up for our engagements so we can let you know when the right time to be calling and reaching out to these people are. But there's a lot of support. We consider this to be extremely viable, and it's being embraced by the right and the left in the media as we speak.
All right, again, that's justicefellowship.org. Well, Craig, it appears to me the whole outcome of Chuck Colson's prison experience and then prison fellowship, the evidence of faith-based impact into the prison system is quite substantial, and I would assume that that's being reviewed as part of the Commission's reason for doing this.
Absolutely, and you know, as a Christian, I believe there is one solution to any problem I've ever had in my life and in my family and anything that I work, and that solution works every time. And we try a lot of solutions as fallen human beings, whether it be in our government or in our daily lives. And what we've seen play out is what I think a lot of us Christians would have expected. You put faith-based initiatives in, you allow, and then you invite in the Word and the principles and the values that we find as Christians, and you'll get a better outcome than the investments in trying to re-educate people or rehabilitate them or train them or give them medication or psychological input. And it's really the results that have driven the support. You know, I think that a lot of this started as pilots under Chuck's leadership, and it's taking hold because the results always back up the reason and the interest and the justification for pursuing this further, and that's what's going on.
Do you think, because I've seen this question pop up on several occasions, that civil rights should be restored to nonviolent felons after they serve their sentence?
As a Christian, that's something that I personally am very passionate about. I also Justice Fellowship works very hard on this with Governor McConnell in Virginia, taking a stand on this. If somebody does something wrong and they're told that they can never get back to good with the community, I think that keeps harm out there. When a crime is committed, it affects the criminal, the victim, and the community. And as a Christian, what I believe and what Justice Fellowship advocates is that that tear in the fabric of all three of those lives should be repaired to the best extent that it can be. So when someone is going to leave prison, they're going to return to society, it's in our interest and in our values to give them an ability to restore their standing in our culture and to not just re-enter society, but to be reintegrated into society. When we keep people that have done something wrong away from participating in our culture, in our society, I think it's inconsistent with our values, and it actually works against us. It doesn't keep us safer. It doesn't make the government less expensive. It keeps people on entitlements. It doesn't allow them to be self-sufficient to raise their own kids. And we're actually as hard as that one is for us, with a lot of people that we're mad at, that's what, in our opinion, Scripture tells us to do. And when it's done, you see that people actually transform their lives and become better citizens, and in many cases, Christians.
Well, total redemption.
As in Chuck Colson was a great living example of that, and many that work at Prison Fellowship have their own stories as well. Perry, someday if you invite me on the show, I'll tell you my own jokes about my life. I explain how I got involved in working for Justice Fellowship.
Well, I'd love to have you back, and we will do that. Let me just encourage you, we only got a minute or so left, justicefellowship.org. That's where they go, and they can get stay up to date with what you're doing there, right?
Absolutely. We send out newsletters. We send out calls to action. Legislative leadership in the U.S. Congress and in the governors and in the states very much appreciate and welcome the messages that come from our organization, because they're asking for us to help them develop the policy in the first place. So please come sign up for the lists. A lot of days, as in today, of all odd partnerships, U.S. Senator Lee and Senator Durbin are trying to redo the sentencing in a way that many faith-based groups are endorsing. And they've asked us to send letters in to the U.S. senators and let them know to support that measure as well. So please come and get on our lists.
All right. In the meantime, when do you think the commission is going to be voted upon?
Well, as we know, the president and the speaker continue to jostle and negotiate. I know that process has an indefinite time period, but we're prayerfully considering and hopeful that sometime in the next couple of months that this, because of the amount of support it has and that it is a renewal of other funds, that this will be approved.
Well, we're certainly pulling for it. That's wonderful. Lastly, Craig, Chuck Colson's legacy, as it lives on, an incredible impact across our culture and across the entire nation with all of his books and writings, but even through the Justice Fellowship, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that the politicians have gotten to see and depend on over the last 30 years, and we're trying to make it more available, Justice Fellowship, to the citizenry and to the voters, and as part of our outreach.
Well, this is wonderful. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for your time. I'd love to have you back. I'd like to hear your own personal story. It sounds like you're a recovering politician.
I'm working on it every day.
All right. Again, it's justicefellowship.org. Check it out. Thanks, Craig. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Perry. Thanks.
Okay, all right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.